Good day, everyone. My name is Næf. I'm a doctoral researcher at Leeds-Beckett University, UK. I would like to share a few thoughts on liveness today. I research avatars in live contexts. That's my day job. But today I come to the Larp world to trade logics of the wrestling world's rituals and sustain belief or disbelief. This that could likely be traversing into your immersive kingdom. Now, liveness is fragile, for it is the deal breaker between what's real and fiction. The sanctity of the characters and stories are upheld by the coveted narrative principle and conceptual framework of kayfabe. Fellon and Blau defined liveness by temporal simultaneity of performers and witnesses sharing the coordinates of space and time, which other scholars went on to build as concepts of presence and immediacy. Scholars like Auslander, Reason, Vanes defined liveness as a cultural construct, continually reshaped by media, contexts, and social contracts. Sorry. Fischer-Lichter's autopoietic feedback loop breaks this mold, where liveness emerges from this recursive exchange between bodies, intentions, and the audience. Murphy extends liveness to lifeness as a verb, a mutual accomplishment of sorts. But in complex settings like our worlds, it is not always an either or. It's not a demarcation and even not a blur. It coexists. It is both real and fiction. It is a superstate, a quantum state, a Schrodinger's liveness of sort. Kayfabe helps frame such liveness with respect to existing distinctions and definitions. An old lightning bottle in new light, so to speak. But what is this kayfabe? Okay, before we get to that, just a bit of context. In 2016, a New York Times article was published under the title of whether whether everything is wrestling. This was during the first Trump presidency campaign, particularly on the workings, which served as the playbook to such politics. And now this extends from social media to AI content and whatnot. My exploration on avatars in live music also hinges on this principle, from tribute bands to holograms and everything in between. Why so? Well, everyone participates in this production of staged truth. It's an active engagement to treat the lie as lived reality, a parallel social contract, if you will. Historically, kayfabe glossary used to be the trade secret lexicons within these carnival circuits who presented wrestling shows. But through television and internet culture, kayfabe has transformed from a one sided duping technique to this mutual masquerade of performed belief between performers and audiences. In wrestling worlds, the idea of superstate is not novel. There are terminologies to define such terms. This combined effect. For instance, the idea of a mark versus smart. So, a mark is someone who is taking a production at face value, whereas a smart is someone who is in the know. A smart is someone who gets it but enjoys it at face value and then critiques it as an expert. And sometimes this blurs out the space between where they're marks and where they're smarts. This could also be at the performer end, where some things are works, which would be performances, scripted work, and then there's shoot, where uh, they could be uh, channeling their real life issues through the performance. And then there's work shoot, where both of them kind of coexist. So, for instance, if someone has beef with somebody else um, backstage and they have to come in front and They have to protect each other because that's part of their professional contract. But then they have to pretend to fight, but make others believe, the audience believe, that it's a real fight, while they also have real fights backstage. And it's hard to say that some punches aren't real within those. How would we know? So that would be worked shoot. Now, in the LARP world, authors like Stenrose have framed LARP through social, diegetic, and gaming lenses, and I can merely attempt to make an effort towards understanding it through the kayfabe logic. So just the examples that we shared, a work shoot here would be where real emotions could erupt and become canonical, or spots, another terminology within the kayfabe world, is about pre-designing dramatic peaks in the narrative. Selling would be staying in character through the storytelling bleeds and experiencing genuine affect, or bumps where you make personal sacrifices for the collective immersion. And there are many other glossaries that could essentially help relocate and reframe the idea of LARPing. Through this transposition, kayfabe essentially helps to reconceive this magic circle as a continually negotiated masquerade. Enable the real and fictional to have a productive collision, and finally hold the fiction real and simultaneously collapse the difference. So what does this mean for liveness? Going back to the primary coordinates, rethinking, immediacy, and presence. Both worlds are product of shared risk, unscripted moments, genuine stakes, possibility of ruptures. Contemporary scholarship models this through bleeds, the seepage between characters and players, fiction and reality. Montola frames role play as a game of formal make-believe. Here the body responds, the emotions are real, the identity shifts, even if temporarily. And what can we learn about liveness? Well, immediacy is not necessarily real time, but real feel time, an effective ritual of sorts. Presence is upheld by perception, a deep resonance to an identity that is beyond just being in a place. As I close, I would urge that instead of fearing the leakage of illusion, I ask how we can double down on emotional immediacy and perceived presence that is sustained by the logic of kayfabe. These aren't just adjectives to me, these are crucial components to narrative design and deconstructions, whatever our kingdoms and weapons be. I hope through this, our kayfabe and fabled worlds can bridge a deep sense of creating the liveliest of experiences. I would like to thank all this literature that's out there and scholars who have helped build such logic to help us understand these complex worlds. And to those who dwell and duel with swords, and those who bleed for fiction, may your narratives bump realities, may your characters get over, and may your magic always sell. Thank you everyone, the listeners, and everyone involved in this endeavor, especially Dr. Hani and team. Thank you.